Hello, everyone. Apologize for the slight delay in getting things working all together, but we are just now seconds away from getting started with Orbx Palm Springs. So hopefully everyone is ready to go because we are kicking off right now. Everyone is ready to go because we are kicking off right now.
I'm here. No, that's all right. So I'll just speak like this. That's all good.
There we go. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the slight delay in getting everything up and running today. As many of you know, this is a preview before release of a product, which I think is the first time I think I've had the opportunity to do this, especially with the developer, as I like to call the artist, on board as well for pre-look. So just a quick pre-disclaimer, this is still in beta. There is not a release date set yet. However, we did spend quite a bit of time poring over the scenery, which explains the slightly delayed start. So hopefully everything will work well. And of course, I'm very excited because Palm Springs is on my side of the woods in the world, obviously. And based on the preview screenshots that we've seen over the last week, everything has been looking absolutely spectacular. So before we jump right in, I just want to make sure that the audio works okay. I know sometimes my voice might be louder or Jarrad might be louder, but I want to make sure that everyone can hear us clearly. So I'm just going to wait for the delay for a couple of seconds here and just make sure that everyone's mic is working fine and everyone can hear us. So Jarrad, if you want to pipe in and just say hello really quickly, we just want to make sure we do a quick sound test for everyone.
G'day, everyone, and hello from evening Perth in Western Australia. And I'll just test my mic now to make sure the levels are fine. So how are we looking? We all good?
We'll just wait for a quick delay. Okay, it looks like the audio is okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So right now, our current position, oh, I realized my gear was up here. Let's put that up. Our current position is actually flying right over Banning Municipal Airport, and this is actually the northern end of the coverage area, which is exactly where we're starting today. So as you can see, we have Orbx FTX Global Base, which obviously is the primary program for compatibility with Palm Springs, being a non-FTX region airport, but exactly Orbx FTX Global, which is a first for an Orbx scenery project. And of course, right now we're flying right over Casino Morongo, which a lot of people were confused last week when they saw those Morongo ads and were trying to figure out what the heck was that all about. So that was kind of a sneak peek for everyone to try to guess and figure out why would I be running a hotel advertisement on Air Daily X. So I thought that was quite a bit of fun. So Jarrad, why don't you go ahead and as we begin to make our way out of Temecula and into the Palm Springs area, what made you decide to not only develop an airport that is not going to be an FTX region dedicated airport, but an airport that that is Palm Springs? Why that choice?
Well, it is the second airport. I'll just make a quick clarification so that I'm making sure that I'm not taking first dibs on anything that I haven't. So the guys, Tim and Ken, did their Papua New Guinea scenery a couple of months ago. So that was in the same mold as this, so it's working for global. But in answer to your question, it's an airport that I've wanted to do for quite a long time. I have visited Palm Springs twice in the past, both on holidays to the US, and it's an amazingly scenic location. It's a big airport. I wanted to move back up to a big airport. I haven't done one for a couple of years, and I certainly haven't done any for the US region, which is where I've been doing most of my work for the last 3 years. And Palm Springs was on the hit list. I know that at some point, I don't have any idea how far off it is, but I do know that the Southern California is on the regional roadmap for Orbx at some date in the future. And I thought that with the release of Global last year, it opened up the opportunity to start looking at airports that didn't fit within our region. So, as I was saying, I've been there twice. Most recently, I was there last June with my partner, and we spent a lovely, very hot couple of days just chilling out by the pool at the Ace Hotel in the middle of Palm Springs, and seeing a few of the sites and visiting the museum. And yeah, it's a very picturesque place. I'm sure that any of you that have visited there can attest to that as well. And it, to me, sprung like the perfect idea of an airport for Flight SimX and Prepare 3D.
Well, one of the things I can say without a doubt, given number one, the amazing coverage area and the quality of photoreal terrain, which, by the way, I have to say, cannot come cheap because it looks very expensive, just given how realistic it looks. And I can tell you, as a native California, as someone who spent quite a bit of time in the high desert, these mountains are incredibly authentic in terms of their appearance and representation. Now, I have to assume the legendary Holger salmon must have something to do with that.
Yes, he was able to lend his very considerable skills in helping out with the nice 10-meter digital elevation mesh that you see there. So within the coverage area, and even a little bit further than the photoreal coverage area, we've got a really nice mesh which Holger was able to work his magic on. And in addition to that, he provided a very valuable assistance role with teaching me a lot of skills in terms of some basic GIS and vector components that I added to the airport. And that was because unlike our normal regional airports, so for example, Monterey and Reading, which were my previous two airports, I would quite often rely on some components in the base package. So things like road traffic and roads and streams and railways along the edges of the scenery. I'd rely on the region pack to blend nicely. But obviously, without having that base region to rely on this time, I had to do a lot of that myself. So yes, Holger was very, very helpful on that, and I was very appreciative of his help on that one.
And what was the decision-making process in determining how large the scenery coverage area would actually be? Because quite naturally, you call it Palm Springs, but in reality, it's really far beyond Palm Springs. Like I said, when we started the stream, we started out near Banning Airport, which is actually in Banning. And it's sort of on the border between Banning and Temecula. And
Yes.
to the north and then to the south, it actually stretches pretty far, almost halfway down to the Salton Sea, which was another little funny video that I added as part of the teasers earlier on last week. So, what was the decision-making process in determining exactly how far you would go with this? Because quite naturally, the bigger the coverage area, the more expensive naturally the photoreal coverage is going to be. And then, of course, you couple that with the fact that this is the second largest, I think, scenery project you've created to date. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So it's just a tiny bit smaller than Jackson Hole, which I released a couple of years ago, which is in terms of the airports under the Orbx banner, is the largest coverage region of any of our airports. I'm trying to come up with a scientific way of how I came to the size conclusion, but to be honest, I just started scouting around for feasible imagery, and I was very lucky with the lower resolution imagery, so the 1 meter imagery, which we're flying over now, in that comes from a free source. The US Geological Survey have some excellent quality data which we use when it's available. So I was able to use that for the extended coverage area, but obviously the higher resolution data around the airport and, to be honest, most of the city of Palm Springs itself came from a commercial supplier. When it came down to it, basically there were two good reference points that created the sort of the east and the west extremes. I really wanted to include San Jacinto Peak. That's obviously the main prominent geographical landmark in the area, the almost 11,000 foot tall mountain. So I wanted to make sure I included that. I wanted to make sure I included the pass with the wind farms. And then to the east, it came down to I liked the look of the Indian Wells Tennis Centre, which is a VFR landmark right at the edge of the scenery. And to be honest, I wanted to model that. And so I went into it going, all right, this will be the basic extent, but I will reduce it if I get sick of doing the autogen. But by the time I got through most of it, it was fine to keep going. And as a nice coincidence, it turned out that there were two airports right at the edges of the scenery. So Banning Municipal, as you mentioned, and then Bermuda Dunes, which is just at the eastern end, as a southeastern end heading towards the Salton Sea. And so I decided to include just a very light version for those. So for those of you that have been using our Orbx freeware airport packs that have been released, it would be akin to them with a little bit of extra, so annotated autogen and photoreal backgrounds.
I'm actually just listening to you and really enjoying just the atmosphere. In fact, I took a quick glance over at one of the comments there, and one of the guys, Renee, was pointing out just how wonderful the atmosphere is. I just can't believe how realistic everything comes together. In fact, I'm having trouble concentrating on flying the little plane here because I'm just really immersed with the level of detail. Now, when exactly did the project start, and how long was the development period?
Well, if anyone with a very long memory for mundane comments from my end might remember when we were chatting last time during our session for Monterey, which I think from memory was the middle to late June, I hadn't actually decided whether I was definitely going ahead or not with this project. So I started not long after that. So I would say about 4.5 months is how long I've taken to work on this. It was my number one priority. It was on my wish list when we were speaking last time. But the big problem that I had, and which still continues to be a problem, was that I wasn't able to get airside access to take photos at the airport. So that's obviously something that is always a top priority to move ahead with the project. I was able to find a very nice fellow flight attendant who lives in the area who was keen to go out and take photos for me, but I did have some problems trying to get in touch with the Palm Springs Airport management. So I ended up making the airport without any access to airside photos, but obviously being a well-known airport, being a popular airport, there was a lot of decent source material available that I was able to use as reference regardless. So yeah, 4.5 months is how long I've been working on this for.
4.5 months.
That's right.
I have to let that marinate a bit because when you look at the size of the projects, and you have to bear in mind that a lot of projects that we're used to seeing really only encompass the airport itself. And I've known certain airport scenery projects to take years to develop. And the fact that this is, for the most part, it's a regional airport, but still, it's still a fairly large airport. And then it has a large coverage area, which requires a lot of autogen. My little plane doesn't want to taxi too well here, even though I've got the differential brakes going on. It wants to give me a little hard time. Sorry for that. And that horrible landing, by the way. But what was I saying? Oh, 4 months is incredible. That's unbelievable. Like I said, I've known certain projects to take years, and for this have only been done in 4 months. Can you give us a quick walkthrough as we make our way over to the main terminal, just in terms of man hours, in terms of like what is Jarrad's daily schedule? Get up, cereal, and then autogen annotating. How does that work?
Yeah, to be honest, it is, if my partner was awake, which she isn't at the moment because it's 2:30 a.m. here, but if she was awake, she would probably pipe in and say, "I've been working far too many hours for the last couple of weeks, particularly." But during the normal part of a project, so anything outside of the last 2 to 3 weeks of a project, I work a pretty normal day. I probably work anywhere between 8 and 10 hours on a normal day. I do have some other work commitments that are just casual basis outside of flight simming. So they obviously work around my development time. But yeah, that's a pretty basic idea. But that goes all out the window once I start focusing in on the end of a project. And I start working very weird hours and keeping very weird hours and not sleeping a great deal and just sort of being a little bit yeah, being quite aggressive in terms of trying to make sure that I can finish it on time. So yes, that's why I'm up so late and not falling asleep at the same time.
That's incredible. I actually meant to make our way over to the regional terminal. So we grabbed Bob. Apologies for that short screen blackout there as I switched over to Bob so that he can give us our own little personal tour here. So I'm just quickly, we're running really fast. Bob is quick, he's in shape. So we're running very quickly over to the regional terminal here. And I think I might have to slew up just a little bit. Those mountains in the background just look incredible. And for anyone who was reading the post that I wrote up yesterday, if you follow Air Daily X at all, I was noting that we almost moved here when I was a kid. And it was my first trip out to Palm Springs. And what I remember, it was the first time that I'd ever seen such a big house. And basically, what happened was we went out to this huge field, and I don't know if anyone watches Arrested Development, but it was like something out of a scene of Arrested Development where you had this huge field with pristine, brand new streets and lights and street signs, but no houses. There were like I think three or four houses total, and all those houses were basically these prefabbed houses, which were designed to for people to go around, take a look, and sort of make a determination in terms of what house they wanted to buy. And then you go out, you walk the streets, and you take a look at what plot or what piece of land you want to live on. And that's pretty much it. And then you come back a year later and you have a house. And I remember going in and looking at some of these model homes. And one was like a three-story house, had 5 bedrooms. I mean, it was something that in Los Angeles proper could easily cost upwards of 5 million, or at least starting at 5 million. And out in Palm Springs, it was something like around 300,000. So we're talking early 90s here. So I was really happy with the thought of moving out there, but the heat was unbearable. I mean, it gets the high desert, which we call high desert because it's a high altitude desert. In the summer, it can hit temperatures upwards of 130 degrees, and it's dry heat. So there's very little humidity, and if you're not used to dry climate, that can really kill you. So definitely no joke. All right, so
That's
we
right.
you've been there, so
Sorry,
you know.
I was just going to pipe in and say that we not that extreme heat, but it does get pretty hot here in Perth. But when we were there last June, I think I'm just trying to do the conversion now, and it was 48 degrees centigrade, which for everyone else was 120 degrees for almost every day that we were there, which was very nice. But as you say, the dry heat is something quite different.
All right, so we have officially made our way into the courtyard area near and you'll have to correct me here. This would be the, I'm thinking terminal-wise. What is the actual name for the terminal here?
To be honest, I don't know what this one's called. I think it's just the regional annex for the terminal. So you see a lot of the CRJs, the sort of the regional offshoots of the mainline airlines. So things like the CRJs, which I've got a couple of static models of, and Horizon with their Q400 will park there as well. But yes, that's just the interstate. So flights to Vegas and Phoenix and whatnot, I think.
Trying to manage Bob's speed here.
Yeah, he can get a little bit aggressive when he wants to.
Yeah, it takes him a minute to get going, and then once he's up there, wow! I'm just looking at the immersion here, just with the catwalk area. This is incredible. How did you make this transparent sort of canopy there? I don't think I've seen anything like this before, to be honest. I mean, it's not glass, but is it the same sort of technique used to create that as glass, or?
It is. It's in fact, it's similar to in terms of the material settings. It's just playing around with the material settings and trying to get the best compromise. What it's most closely related to would be the ground shadows that I use for my static aircraft. So it's just got a very slight level of transparency to give that canvas sort of feel to it. And I used an interesting little app within 3D Studio Max to try and get the canvas to droop as realistically as possible without using too many polygons.
Excellent. Now I'm gonna just pop over and have a, caramel macchiato. Can I get you anything from here or?
I am all good. I've had my share of Starbucks.
Wow. Okay. So we've got people flow. Oh wow, she's very attractive.
She
Nice
was just
luggage here. Now I don't think anyone has ever asked this before. So the people flow models are they actually modeled after anyone in particular, or do you just sort of make up the facial expressions, or could we be seeing people that we might know in some of these people flow, or do you have family members that sort of stand in as models for scale purposes, or how does that all work? I mean, I don't know if you work really directly with people flow, but that was one of the things that I've always wondered.
that was all the masterwork of George, who is the author of the Static Flow Library 2, which is all you will see here. We also have the older Static Flow Library 1, which you might see in some of our other products, which was done by Russ White. So I couldn't answer for them, and I can't even. I won't try to make any kind of call on that because I don't want to get anyone in trouble.
Right. And now we've made our way over to the jungle gym here. Can I assume that this is new animation that was created specifically for this jungle gym, or did you guys have this pre-programmed already?
Um, all the static flow, sorry, all the people and the animated people models that we have are all existing types. So the girl that's doing her little hop around on the play equipment has been used before. I don't know how often. Certainly in my experience, I used it once at the park at the second airport in Reading, and that's the only other time I've used it. But there are a couple of other models in the library that I'm waiting for the perfect excuse to put in. And with this jungle gym, I had that in mind when I was making it.
That's incredible. And in fact, I noticed in the comments a lot of people really were excited about the whole jungle gym uh, thing there and saying, "Wow, I'm glad you actually included that," which is actually pretty amazing. It's the little things like that. And I think nowadays we're really starting to see flight simulation enthusiasts get more and more interested in the finite details like that, as opposed to just, seeing simulation as a purpose of just flying, but actually having that immersion. I mean, naturally, if you're that WestJet aircraft out there, and
Mhm.
sorry, I had to slew just a little bit to get Bob in the right direction. But
Good.
and you're sitting in that virtual cockpit, and you just happen to look over and see a jungle gym with a little girl jumping around on it. That makes all the difference. It really does. So I certainly hope that those watching and those who buy the product have what's the word that I'm looking for? An appreciation, I think, for just a level of effort that goes into just the little small things like that.
Well, thanks for that. That's very nice to hear. And you're right. I think for me, I a big part of my simming is still outside the airport. So to be honest, that's a massive reason why I like to include lots of interesting things outside of the airport perimeter, and particularly why I like to have a large photoreal coverage area. But certainly, Palm Springs is quite unique where most of these components that would be hidden within inside a terminal, they are all outdoors. So it gave the opportunity to really to go to town, so to speak, on a lot of these little details. And the same thing is we're looking at, or what I'm looking at with a little delay, the escalators here. So that was another little detail that doesn't take too much time, but it's just a nice little thing that adds a little bit of color to the scenery.
Now, will Bob ride the escalator?
Now, I've done a few practice runs. He won't automatically go up. You need to do a bit of a run up, so you can try, but you might find it a little bit difficult.
Let's see. Let me slew back and try a run up one more time here. All right, we're gonna just try to run right up and see if it'll take us. Here we go. I don't think I've ever seen animated escalators before either. Can you give us a little insight on that?
It was a bit of a spur of the moment thing. I finished making this particular part of the model and thought, oh, that'd be nice to do. And I'd done, which is a bit of a first for me. I did a lot of animations in this scenery that I don't normally do a lot of animations, and this is quite a simple little model. There's not a great deal of there's nothing particularly fancy about it, and I'm sure that all the scenery developers and modelers that are looking at it have figured out already how it was done. But it's just something nice that I think that adds a little bit of flair to the scenery rather than just having a static version.
Okay, well, Bob kept jumping on the escalator. I did saw that he rode it up a little bit, then he jumped back down. So I just switched over to slowing just a little bit to get us up there. And, ooh, wait a minute. I just got to get control here. Sonny Bono, concourse here.
Yes, the mayor of Palm Springs, I believe, for a little while.
I actually didn't know that.
I didn't either. I've been learning lots of very interesting facts, particularly a lot from some of the people on the Orbx forum who have been very forthcoming with a lot of very useful pieces of information.
Wow, just doing panning around. I got to tell you, the glass really just makes all the difference. And I love the fact that they really, just in real life, how they made this an open air airport. Although during the summer, I imagine most are not really spending too much time outside. But to be honest, I've actually never flown out of the airport here. So, um,
No, me neither. When we both times that I visited, I've driven in and out from other locations. Anecdotally, when I was doing a little bit of research, it seems that during the height of summer, a lot of the flights, or a lot of the main flights, seem to come in either in the early morning, the early afternoon, or the evening. So I don't know how much truth there is to that, but that was what I had read in a few different places, which would certainly help with the outdoor area, because I can't imagine it would be too pleasant during the middle of the day.
and I'm noting the simple things like the video cameras up there that were
Mm-hmm.
added in. Very nice.
Yes, I can't attest for their 100% accuracy. I'm not sure if they're exactly the right model that Palm Springs use, but they're a representation nonetheless.
And here we are, sort of in the main area here. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I don't think there's ever going to be an excuse for me to ever fly out of Palm Springs either. I mean, for me, it's just a couple hours drive, and that's pretty much it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
It seemed to be there was based on a few of the advertisements that I had seen um, around. So there was some of these little billboards that are within the scenery area, and I didn't use them, but a couple of the ones that I did see in reference material sort of indicate that there was a lot of traffic coming down from Canada, particularly to visit the casinos and other entertainment precincts. That I think explained a bit of the non-business traffic that came into Palm Springs.
that makes sense.
And so, just in this little forecourt here, the interior section here, just a little note on that is that all the shops that you see along the walls and the laboratories as well, and the gates, they're all exactly as they are in real life as well.
Yeah, I imagine getting imagery for that's probably not too difficult if people are taking pictures, at least to have some form of point of reference.
That's right. That's right. There was, yeah, I think I probably managed to get about 100 photos or so of the terminal all round. There are certainly a few spots that I had to rely on quite low resolution imagery to get the basic idea, but there was certainly enough to fill in most of the gaps.
Now, one of the things I remember you mentioning is the fact that you actually had to create all new vegetation for this project. Did I understand that correctly?
That's right. So, um, I, I mean, there are certainly types of autogen vegetation within the Orbix pantheon that were able to be used, but there is that really particular style of California fan palm, particularly the really spindly, tall ones that line all the streets of Palm Springs and LA and some of the other Californian cities. And we didn't have something that captured that feel to it. And because all the cities of the Coachella Valley, just basically all of them have these trees lining, I figured I'd need to make something like that to make sure that it was consistent and accurate. And what I ended up deciding to do was once I I figured out how to do that, I moved ahead and just designed a whole vegetation system. So I think there's 14 types that I made in the end, and they're all basically variation. Most of them are variations of palm trees, and then I added a few others. And by having all of my own for the city areas that are annotated, what that's meant is that I've had full control over the material libraries, which is it's not a big performance benefit, but over a large area and with a lot of dense autogen, it does make a big difference, or it does make a difference to performance, and it just is one of the many things that helps in that regards.
Okay, and I wanted to take a moment and pan out of the airport. I know that unfortunately you're watching the same delay that everyone else is, Jared, but I had to take a moment and pan out to the lot and look at the main fountain there, and just look at some of the vegetation and all of the special effects that you put in there, from the water shooting out, the
Uh-huh.
animated flag, the whole nine yards.
Uh-huh.
My goodness,
That's
and
right. And
you go ahead.
I know that you always pick me up for the car park, so I made sure that I didn't make it too low resolution.
You know, it's funny because I was just getting ready to mention that too. I was going to say that I just can't believe how realistic everything really looks. The parking lots, all of the vegetation, the obviously you've taken the time to hand place the different parts of vegetation, and then just with the terminal in the background, everything just comes together perfectly. And I'm even noting the green lights on some of the traffic signals here.
Yeah, don't look too closely at them. I think you'll find too many green lights and no red lights. So
No reds.
yeah, try not to look too hard at those.
And I did glance over and notice that someone asked if the aircraft are removable via the control panel, which I believe they are. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I know that a lot of people prefer to not have them at all. And so what I've done is I've got four in the control panel options. I've got four options for the aircraft. So you can deselect or select any combination of them based on your preferences. So we've got the airliner traffic, which is all the regular RPT traffic that flies into and out of the airport. I've also got a selection for charter operations, which for those that are very good at these things, you may notice that there are a couple of types of aircraft that don't regularly fly to Palm Springs. So particularly Allegiant don't normally fly their 757s into Palm Springs, and Air Canada aren't at the moment a regular visitor. They've got their low shoot subsidiary, which is starting operations there quite soon. So whilst I've got both those in, they're considered charter operators, so they can be deselected as well. And then you've got just the normal corporate aviation aircraft, so the business jets, and then the general aviation aircraft, so the smaller single and twin engine um, propeller aircraft, which you can disable as well. Because I know that a lot of people don't want to have airliners, but they still want to have the less important static aircraft, and some people want pure accuracy, so they don't want to see the charter operators and whatnot. So I've tried my best to try and cater to everyone's taste with that.
Quite right. And I've made my way back onto the ramp area. Bob is
Mm-hmm.
he's running so fast. Just to try to take a look at some of the static aircraft that you were talking about as well, and looking at some of the people flow animations loading the aircraft, as well just the external view of the main terminal. Is there anything in specific that you'd like me to just sort of point out?
No, I think purely up to you. This is yeah, it all looks fine to me. I'm all very happy with it, and yeah, it's up to you. The static flow models, I've used a combination of mostly new types, new skins for of existing types for the terminal area. So the Allegiant 757 and the WestJet 737 and the CRJ, the Delta Connection, are all new aircraft that we haven't used before. The Frontier Embraer, I think I used in Bozeman, and the Alaskan 737, which was done by Russ White, you might recognize from a few of our Alaskan airports, and the other CRJ 200 was also from Monterey as well.
And as far as the airfield goes, because I know one of the things that you and I discussed is that we wouldn't spend too much time seeing all the scenery because, quite naturally, we want everyone to have an opportunity once they get it to go exploring on their own. As we know, there are a number of landmarks throughout Palm Springs, and so, quite naturally, it should be fun for everyone to go out and actually find some of these landmarks on their own. We will, however, take some time and see at least a few of these landmarks, but as long as we're still in the airport before we depart the airport area, I just wanted to double
Mhm.
check one more time. Was there anything with the corporate areas that you should? I know that we want to take a look at that museum, which is where I'm going to head to next. Is there anything else on the airfield that we should show as of now, or should we just take a look at that
I,
museum?
we can leave that for everyone to have a look in their own time. There are quite a few other detailed areas to check out, as well as the terminal and the museum. So the new control tower is worth a look out for people when they get their hands on the scenery. And there's a couple other items as well, which we've advertised in the promo material, but I haven't made too much of a fuss of. So there's some interesting things for them to check out. And also probably worth a good look at is the Sky West have one of their maintenance facilities on the far side of the field, and I put in a little bit of extra detail around there as well. I know that people quite often like looking at the open hangars, so I've done something a little bit different for that one there. But yeah, if we head over to the museum, that's probably the only other area that I'd be keen to have a bit of a look at tonight.
All right, we're going to head straight over there now. And just in terms of complexity,
Mhm.
how does Palm Springs rank on that list for you? Would you still find that maybe Bozeman or any of the others are a little bit more complex, just in terms of scale and how much work that goes into it, or does Palm Springs pretty much flow right there in the middle?
Um, in terms of the detail of the scenery itself, so particularly around the airport, the terminal would be right up there with one of the most detailed components I've made for any of my sceneries. There's probably a few of the smaller airfields. So I remember when I did Phelps Field in Spokane, I put a lot of detail into that terminal as well. But certainly, as an overall project, this would be one of the probably the most complex project I've ever done. Probably Cairns International in Australia, which I did a couple of years ago, was also a massive project that I worked on with a lot of components outside of the airport. And certainly the terminals there are a little bit larger, but they don't quite have the same fidelity that I've put into Palm Springs this time around.
I'm just taking a look at the application of all the airplane logos on the Robert J. Pond hangar there on the outside. That just looks really awesome.
Thanks,
That
man.
is really cool. And
So again, the museum is obviously a popular choice for people taking photos. So I didn't have any shortage of reference material for this one because there's lots of enthusiasts and tourists that like to put up their photos. And in fact, I had a couple of photos in my collection as well from when I visited there last year.
I wonder what it must be like to be you, Jared. And I'm gonna explain. When you visit a place like Palm Springs, or just whenever you're traveling somewhere, is it sort of
Mhm.
like a musician or something like that, where you start to think, "Oh my God, I've got to do this"? I mean, does that ever occur to you, or does it happen maybe a little bit later on after the fact? How does that whole process work? Because I mean, I imagine for me, I have to be thinking, if I visit someplace new for the first time and if I'm a developer, I mean, does a thought
Mhm.
occur like you see something from a certain angle, then you realize, oh my gosh, okay, I have to do this. I have to start investigating and researching. I mean, is your brain always working that way? Or is it just something that sort of light bulbs in the middle of the night months later, and then you realize, actually, that might have been a good idea?
A bit of column A, a bit of column B, I think is probably the best answer to that question. Certainly, there are times where I might visit a place in my travels and know that it's something that I would like to consider as a project, and so I might take a bit more of an effort to pay attention. And certainly in my US travels, there's only been once when I've been fully organized enough and had the foresight to prepare ahead and make sure I had any kind of permission to take some airside photos. That's a scenery that I haven't made yet. It could possibly be my next one, but I'm not sure yet. But otherwise, and this is certainly for the case for Palm Springs, is it something that I think, oh, that'd be a good project, but I don't really think about it too much, quite often because I'm on holidays. And then when I get home, I kick myself and think, oh no, I probably should have done a little bit more organisation and got all the photos or the reference material when I was there. But certainly, there is a little bit of a coincidence with some of the projects that I've done all along the way, in fact, and where I have been on my travels. So not that I talk too much about what I do outside of Orbx, but if anyone notices on the Orbx forum that I might mention that I've been somewhere in real life, then that might possibly give a clue as to a potential project at a later stage.
I see. Okay, and I'm going to have to issue a bit of an apology here in advance. Things have not been working out well for me the past couple of days. Yesterday during the stream, I ran into a pretty big issue with the broadcasting software. Before I could even start that project, it took me almost an hour to get that whole thing worked out. And then when that was finally done, then I ran into another problem. And it seems like I'm running into another issue right as we speak. I'm going to have to try to take a quick second to fix this. As Jarrad and I, just really quickly for the audience, as Jarrad and I were preparing, we were trying to decide what aircraft would be best to fly into the scenery area. And we both settled on Lionheart's amazing brand new Learjet. And then the Learjet just didn't work out at all, ran into all kinds of issues. And so I've ran into another issue with our R66 here, which is the same as the Learjet. And I did a fresh install everything. And in fact, we did a screen share just to make sure everything worked out properly. And then for some reason, it still didn't install correctly. And it's the same thing with my poor R66 here. So if everyone can just bear with me for 2 seconds. I'm going to try to fix this really, really quickly. Give me just one moment. I really do apologize. And then before the stream, there was issues with the Skype program. So this is a bad week for me. As some of you know, October 31st was my birthday. And every single year during my birthday, for some reason, something always seems to go wrong. I don't know why that is. That same week, the car broke down, and that was like nearly $2,000 to repair. And my car doesn't have that many miles on it, so it was pretty sad. But it's just outside the warranty. So it seems like this time of year, I always run into some form of issue or other. And so this past week has just been really tough. So again, thanks everyone for just bearing with me. Sorry if your screen goes back a couple of times. That's just me reselecting the aircraft, which I think I just fixed. Hopefully I did. We're going to cross our fingers. And it's important to select the helicopter because it is the focal point of the next part of the scenery, which we're getting ready to take a look at here in just a second.
And while we are waiting for that, I'm just having a bit of a flick through. My apologies to everyone that has been asking questions on the site. I have been reading them all, but I haven't got into answering them yet. We'll have a proper look at them at the end. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, I might just answer a few of the more recent ones. So I see a question here from Happy Metal that asks, do I work with any other guys? Is there any other help in this scenery? And the answer is yes, there is. So I work as a developer on the Orbx team. So this project, I would say, of the scenery itself, not including any of the installers or any of that kind of stuff, which is done by our team members, I would outsource probably between 2 to 4% of the project out, depending on what it is. So for this one, I've done a lot more components myself than I would normally do. So the incidental things like the vector data and whatnot, I've had some assistance from Holger, but I have made the source material myself. The big things that I have got some help with on this project, and all my projects, in fact, are the APX files. So I have a particular guru who has done most of the projects with me ever since the start of Orbx. So Graham Eccleston He's done most, with a few exceptions, he's done most of my APXs, so he's been working his magic on this one. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, Holger did the mesh data and also helped me out with some training on a few other components. And otherwise, one of my other fellow developers, Tim Harris, did some helped out a little bit with the autogen. We kind of fluffed our way into working out how to make the vegetation together. So that was a help on that. And otherwise, mostly myself. There are components of the Orbx libraries which I use, so the people models and a couple other components. But yeah, I sort of just go disappearing for a couple of months and just go into my study and work quietly, and then come out at the end of it with some files for John and Ed and the team to have a look at. And then they're all very helpful and give a massive amount of help with the beta testing and helping out with different components. So it certainly is a team effort. How are we looking? We're looking good at my end.
Yeah, finally I got that working. The other thing that's also not working today, by the way, folks, is my track IR. For some reason, that's not connecting to the simulator. Otherwise, I'd be flying from the virtual cockpit. But yeah, there's just so many things that just it's been an aggravating week. I just want to make sure I'm definitely flying in the correct direction for the next part of the scenery that we're going to showcase. Is that correct?
That's correct. So if you see that gap in the mountains that you're heading straight to, those two water tanks, you'll see the road that leads up to the aerial tramway straight from there.
Okay, and then one of my favorite helicopters, besides the R66, that I typically tend to gravitate towards is the Nimitz MD-902. And the reason why I like the 902 is just because it's very powerful and it goes fast, obviously quite a bit faster than the R66 here. But you recommended that I use the R66 for a specific purpose, and I actually just like you to explain that to the others, because if it's one thing that I've been known to do in my streams is crash, and I think my viewers have come to enjoy that from time to time. So maybe you can just explain a little bit your experiences with the R66 making its way up this mountain here.
Well, like you, I use the R66 quite a lot. It's probably my default helicopter at the moment. And so when I was developing this particular component, and for those of you that aren't aware where we're heading to the Palm Springs aerial tramway, which is a very famous landmark in Palm Springs. So it was built in the early 60s, and basically it's a gondola that goes from almost the valley level, so about 2,000 feet, up to quite a way up the mountain, so up to 8,000 feet. So it was a bit of an engineering feat when it was finished in the 60s. And helping with the development, they used a lot of helicopters, which was one of the first times that they actually used helicopters in the aid of constructing a large structure like this. And along the way, they created some helipads, and the towers that support the gondolas on the way up, in fact, have tiny little helipads on the top of each one, which is quite a challenge to land on. And the reason that I recommended that we use the R66 was that when I was testing, I was finding that the R66 was really struggling towards a couple of the top towers because of the high altitude and thin air, particularly on hot days. So basically, I just wanted to see Andre crash a helicopter. I know that's why you're all watching it tonight as well. I know that's why we're all tuning in. So it's basically just a setup.
Okay, here we are. And how many helipads are on the way up, by the way?
There's 5 towers and 5 helipads, so they're all identical on the way up. There's no specific helicopter landing facilities at either the base station, the valley station, or the mountain top station, but there is plenty of room. In fact, there's a car park down here, and there's plenty of room up the top to have a land if that's what you're looking for.
And were you able to successfully land the R66 on all 5?
I will say yes.
Okay, so if you did, oh, I'm sorry.
Last one is the most difficult, and I was doing some testing the other night, and I definitely got to the top one in the R66. Took a few goes, but I got up there.
All right. Now, sometimes the eye point is difficult to see. I thought I was under it, and over it, and I wasn't. So I'm actually just making an attempt to land on the first one now. I guess I have to zoom in a little bit to make sure that I'm actually over it. So I'm going to try. We're going to just go first for the sake of time. We're going to go first and last. And ooh, I need to zoom out a little bit here. It's kind of hard to see. Oh wow, I'm actually struggling just on the first one here. Oh, and this is, oh, there's a slight, okay, I can make a slight excuse. There's a little bit of a of wind up here, but oh wow. I love helicopter challenges, and I'm trying to think what are some of the bigger challenges that I'm aware of in terms of, I know that there's a company called LLH Creations, and they have a number of high elevation helipads up in the Alps. And those are some of the ones that I've been known to kind of struggle with. And I think, oh, okay, okay, I just barely got it on there. Okay, so that took me a minute just to get the first one. And our elevation up here right now is what, 2,969 feet. So we're going to try to work our way up to the highest one. But while I do that, just taking a look at this terrain. So I know that you said some of the terrain you were able to get was free. And would
Mhm.
this be a part of that? Or,
Yes, this is the lower resolution 1 meter imagery that you're seeing here. So this isn't the same fidelity that obviously we saw over at the airport. And that's also, as well as being free, it's a big consideration in the size of the scenery. So if we were looking at even a 60 centimeter resolution photoreal area, which would be the next size up, the next resolution up, you'd be looking at sort of 4 times the size, and then 30 centimeters, obviously 4 times the size again. So very quickly, it would become a very, very large scenery download, which is, whilst it's not a massive priority, it's certainly something that I want to avoid if it's feasible.
now I have to be honest here, even though, as you say, it's sort of a low resolution imagery, I forgot to remove my cockpit view with their new reinstallation. That's why we're seeing the scenery having to constantly reload. Sorry about that. But actually, the quality looks pretty good.
I've got to be honest. The big thing that really helps with this is the the mesh, Holger's mesh, that really makes the scenery sing. But if you look, you see some of the. It's a standard pitfall with using the photoreal is that anything that has a high vertical change over distance, so for example, cliff faces and whatnot, you are going to get that really distorted, stretched texture look, which unfortunately it's just is part and parcel of using photoreal. But I think that the trade-off is always to the positive over using a land class for something like this. I mean, the next step up is to do something like the freeware Yosemite that Frank released over at Orbx earlier this week, where he actually makes custom 3D models the entire mountain face and maps the textures appropriately and gets rid of the stretching. That stuff is just, that's amazing what he's doing, and that would be the next step up. But I think for a project like this, that's not that's not really feasible if I want to not pan this project out another couple of months.
Right. I mean, even given that, though, I look at this and I just wonder how is that possible? I mean, one of the things that I did while I was busy drooling at those screenshots that were posted is I loaded up the sim and just looked at the default Palm Springs via FTX Global just to get an idea of what it looks like to really know how big the difference is. And, to be quite honest, I mean, it's huge. So when you see, and obviously what makes the scenery is really the mountains. I mean, besides the airport, which is the centerpiece, it's really the
Mm-hmm.
surrounding mountains that makes Palm Springs. I mean, we have an event here every summer
Absolutely.
called Coachella, and people flying from all over the world. It's like the modern Woodstock, if you will. And it's everywhere you look. I mean, it's just you have the Valley Mountains in the background, and that's what really just sort of sets the whole scene for where you are. Even when it comes to all of the golf tournaments that are out here, I mean, one thing that's mistakable is it's always the mountains in the background, and obviously, if you can't get that right, then naturally you're not going to really be able to accomplish it. But I mean, you've accomplished it in a way that far exceeded my expectations, and obviously it takes someone like Holger to make all this happen. And I mean, it looks perfect. So I actually thought that you guys had to purchase all of this photo reel. But I mean, to know that you were able to, get some of this for free is really good, because I just can't imagine. I mean, aside from the size of the download file, I just can't imagine what this would have cost, just in terms of
Sure.
the scale and size of it. Absolutely. And of course, one of the biggest complaints I'm seeing lately is people are concerned about download sizes lately. And obviously we there's so many add-ons out there. 2015 was a huge year for add-on sceneries, so quite naturally, people are just, their hard drives are getting cluttered and cluttered, and even I am now starting to wonder, or trying to be careful about everything that's on my hard drive, and I may have more projects than the usual person on my hard drive.
Hmm.
So naturally, everyone's worried about file size, and naturally, everyone also wants photoreal. And
Yes.
nowadays, it's like you have to have it. If you don't have it, that can really, hurt the overall sale of a project by not having photoreal. So it's the photoreal that makes these large sizes, and so to be able to still do it, accomplish, in my opinion, a highly realistic effect and keep the file size low, I think is a great accomplishment or achievement, I should say.
Well, thanks. That's yeah, thanks. It's you're right. It's always a very fine balance in trying to find um, what's feasible, but without overdoing it, without overkill just for the sake of it. And I think if you're going to do a photoreal area, it's better just to do it well than to have a huge area just for the sake of it. And yeah, I think that as you said, and going back a couple of points, what you were mentioning before about the backdrop, that also was one of the big reasons why I like Palm Springs as a project, because it's just a very dramatically beautiful location. It's quite like it had the same appeal to me as Jackson Hole did, where you've got that dramatic mountain backdrop, and I think that really makes it an interesting location, because it's not just an airport that you're flying into, and it's not just relying on whether the airport has an interesting shaped terminal or whether it's got something going for it. It's the scenery around it that really makes a project.
Well, I can tell you, I'm going to have a lot of fun practicing on these helipads. I think I did horribly, by the way. I didn't fully crash, but it was certainly something of a challenge. So, uh, one of the things that a lot of people have been complimenting Orbx about as of recent is the fact that there were complaints in the past about, oh, there's only just these light VFR airfields, and I like my NGX, and there's a lot of people who are not really interested in the NGX. They like to fly the VFR airfields, and so you guys have really found, I think, the perfect trade-off by really going after these regional airports that has a little something for everybody. But then, of
Yeah.
course, there's your helicopter pilots, and naturally, there's a lot of people who, like for me, for example, sometimes I'm just too bored to fly anything, or too lazy, I should say, to fly anything. And so one of the things I'll tend to gravitate to is just a helicopter, and look for like a fun challenge or something like that. And so what I'm seeing a lot lately now too is something even for the helicopter fans, or the whirly birds, I think, as many, or the egg beaters as it's called on Orbix. Is that there's even something for helicopter fans too, and it's just a lot of fun to just play around and practice landing on the helipads, and because I do tend to get bored, and obviously a helicopter, in my opinion, is probably the best tool just for enjoying and surveying a scenery. Helicopters and of course gliders. So I think here you're going to have a lot of glider fans who are waiting for the upcoming. Is it the Ask 21 from Aerosoft? And for you glider pilots out there, I think that even if you don't plan on flying into Palm Springs Airport, I think you're going to have a lot of fun just soaring over this fantastic scenery, because it looks
Mm.
incredibly great. So once again, one of the things we mentioned is that we're not going to show off the entire scenery. Because again, there's a lot for all of you to go in and notice and explore on your own. There's just one last bit, if I'm not mistaken, Jarrett, that you definitely wanted to show everyone, and that is the Bob Hope House. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It's not a very detailed model, but it's just a nice little reference point, which is close to. And in fact, I might, if it's possible, we might swing past somewhere else along the way, which is quite close, which is the water park, which
Ah,
is
that's right.
quite near the airport. So yeah, are you right for finding your way, or do you need a
Um,
little bit of?
yeah, you actually gave me when we spoke earlier to look for the two. I think they're like two large water tanks or something like that, just off the runway threshold, if I'm not mistaken. So I think I'm
That's
going
right.
in the right direction.
That's right. So if you see this parkland and golf course, which is just to the right of the head that runs through the city, if you follow that up, you'll come across it.
Well,
But,
this is definitely California. And so, talking a little bit about FTX Global Airports once again, and I never want to forget my friends Tim and Kim, who are just amazing at the work that they do, and I love the challenges that they have provided in Papua New Guinea. I'm looking forward to more, as well as some of their other projects that they're planning in that particular region of the world. But again, this is the second official, and thank you for correcting me on that earlier, because I don't know how I could have forgotten. But this is the second official FTX global base project. Is that the proper term, I guess, to use for it?
yes, I don't know. John, I'm sure will correct me on this, but I couldn't give you an exact term that we're using, but we're just making airports that blend with the base global package. So that's basically it. It's just a nice way of making sure that we make airports that aren't within the regions, but also that blend in and work, yeah, perfectly with our existing suite of products such as global.
And obviously, the FTX regions are still important. FTX Norway is underway, and of course, as mentioned earlier, Orbx Southern California is also currently in development. And I imagine we'll still continue to see dedicated airports for those particular projects. And I believe in John's statement, if I remember correctly, in his recent statement, I think he stated that there's going to be two FTX regions per year. Did I read that correct?
I couldn't. You would know better than than I would. But I don't know. Not that I'm able to talk about it anyway, but I genuinely don't have any time frame for the guys working on the regions. I know that what they're cooking up is amazing. It's the stuff that they're working on at the moment is fantastic, and as you mentioned, Norway is being worked on at the moment, and there are certainly some airports that are being worked on for our existing regions as well. So it's not a case of a full shift over to global only airports. We're still going to be doing what we've always done and producing really high quality airports that work perfectly with our existing regions as well.
So definitely one thing that we can secure is the fact that FTX Global airports are here to stay.
I think so. Again, there's we should never lock anything in stone. That always gets you in trouble at
That's
some
true.
point down
That's
the
true.
track, inevitably. But certainly, as long as things are being successful, both with Palm Springs and obviously Tim and Ken had some excellent success with Papua New Guinea. Their project just went gangbusters. And rightly so, I should mention as well. So as long as there's that demand, then certainly that will hold sway over the selection criteria for each of the developers when we're looking at our individual projects. So
And
yes, so again, sorry for the delay and the lag, but I'm just seeing you're flying over the water park here. So it was something that I put a little bit of extra detail in. A, because it looks fun, it's something that stands out. There's a lot of bright colours. It's a water park, but also because it's a nice reference point on short finals to the two main runways at Palm Springs. So for those of you when you get your hands on it and flying in on your airliners or whatever aircraft type that you're flying, you'll notice that when you make your final turn or if you're doing a long point, if you've got your full gear down, flaps full down. This is a nice reference point just before you make your final approach.
I also noticed that the even though I've turned down my water settings for the purposes of the stream, and because there are not exactly any oceans nearby, I didn't think I needed it just to help out with the stream. But I did notice that you water masked the little water areas inside the water park as well, which I thought was a nice little attention to detail there.
Yes, so the water park is probably an obvious one, but there are everything that's everything that's high enough or large enough for me to be able to physically do it in Photoshop. Everything that's a water body is masked out. So probably some other popular ones. There's most golf courses have at least one ornamental lake, so they're all visible. And I think even a couple of the hotels have larger pools that I was able to manage to cut out as well. And also, what you might notice, or what you guys might notice when you check it out yourselves, is that particularly for the larger golf resorts and also for a lot of the golf courses close to the airport, that some of the ornamental lakes have fountains as well. So you'll see the fountains and even a couple of golfers wandering around as well, although they're probably a little bit harder to find.
That's the fun of the exploration.
Yeah,
um,
that's right.
yeah.
And whilst I mean, I realise that when I sort of put my previews up, I do spam a lot. I talk a lot about all the different components. But to be perfectly honest, there is a lot of stuff in here that I haven't made any mention of, just because there's no need to, and also because I'd like everyone to have a few of those little experiences of finding stuff out for themselves as well, and coming across a nice, cool little feature for themselves that they didn't know was there.
Are there any Easter eggs?
No, I think I've done it once in the past, but there's no gimmicky kind of things. You won't find my autograph anywhere on this one or anything like that, or Super Mario wandering around.
That's one of the things that, it's funny when it comes to Easter eggs. It's one of those things that tends to get mixed reactions. There are people who enjoy them and love searching and look. It's like playing a game of Where's Waldo, if you will. But then aside from that, there are those that are like, no, don't do it. You make it unrealistic. So it's just kind of interesting, the mixed reactions with that. But to save anyone the trouble of thinking that there may be some here, especially given the fact that there's so many landmarks, there are no Easter eggs. So don't bother wasting your time.
No, there was only I. And to be honest, I always think it would be fun to put something in, and then at the start of a project, I go, oh yeah, I'll put that in, and then I forget about it, and then we get to this point, and I realised that I totally forgot about it. I only did it once. I did it at Cairns. So that's a bit of a clue for anyone that's looking to go and hunt around. There is something hidden in Cairns that's probably a little bit hard to find.
Hmm. I think I shall do that shortly. Now, the next big thing that I want to talk about, because we're getting ready to kind of smooch on over to the night lighting. We're just above Bob Hope here, and after night lighting comes the wrap up. But the next big thing, which is probably the 900-pound gorilla in the room or in the scenery, is the performance. And the
Hmm.
performance has been very, very fluid. I have not experienced any stutters, especially with helicopters, because helicopters is the worst possible thing you can fly and then wind up having to encounter stutters with. And heading up the mountain, flying over all the autogen, even we started with the airplane, and we moved from an area that was very, very sparse, and then into an area that was very dense with all custom autogen. And I did not really see a difference at all in performance. And I know that one of the things you were mentioning as well is some new performance techniques and things that you've done to make sure this runs smoothly. And what did you want to say about that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's something that I always stress a lot about because I do like to put a lot of detail in, but it is something that and all of us do, all developers do. We put in a lot of time and effort into figuring out what is the best way that we can get the most performance out of the most detail. And everyone has different techniques and methods that they prefer using, and there isn't any exact way to do it. There are a lot of different approaches, and all come to very similar results. And for me, I think the big thing for me is consolidating materials and textures. And so for both the airport and the non-airport areas, so the landmarks, I'm always very careful about how many textures I use and not overdoing that aspect. And I do that because I do like to put in a lot of geometry into some of the more important components. So you'll see that the shape of the terminal and the little components in there is very detailed, but the textures aren't as high resolution as you might see in other sceneries. And that's just a preference of mine. There are a lot of other tricks as well. So what we were talking about before about the custom autogen that was able to help a lot. And there are a lot of different components, and I'm not sort of trying to hide anything. It's just there are a lot of little things along the way that I can't think of right now that I try to add in. But it is very relieving to get feedback because, to be honest, my computer is 3 years old and I run it pretty lean and mean. I don't have a huge amount of other stuff on there, and I always get like I'm not I don't ever BS about performance when people ask on the forums. I give them my honest answer, but as we all know, it's always going to have a different result on different computers. So when we go out to beta testing, it's always the first thing I need to get performance figures. And then from people like yourself who are having a bit of a look, it is very relieving to know that it's not just my computer that the scenery is running pretty well on.
It's lovely. I mean, I have to say, I'm speechless just with the amount of work and the effort that you put into this just in a 4 month period. Jarrad, I mean, you're getting better and better. And Misha, as much as I love him, as great as he's come along, he just said the funniest thing to me when these first previews came out. And sorry, Misha, but I have to say it because when he said this to me, I just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And he just said something to the effect of, leave it to Jarrad to, make a fellow developer feel, insignificant. I don't think he said insignificant, but the joke he was basically making is the fact that I've been really hailing Misha as just how far he's come along in such a short period of time. And,
Absolutely.
I know that
Absolutely.
he looks up to you, I think, for a lot of his skill. I definitely think it shows. But then you turn around and with every product, it's like it's not that you're one upping someone else, you're one upping yourself. So every single time you do another project, it's just like, wow, I thought, it couldn't have gotten any better than Bozeman. And then after Bozeman came Reading, which was a huge step up, and then after Reading came Monterey, which was just incredible, incredible. And then you've come and you've done Palm Springs, and then Palm Springs, you've one up yourself again. So it's like it leaves me continuously wondering, what are you going to do next? And I know that you're not going to tell us, um, but it's just one of those things that I just keep looking forward to checking the Orbx forums. When's Jarrad coming back? When's Jarrad coming back? What's going to be next? What's going to be next? So, and certainly, I don't think you have let anyone down. You made the comment that whether or not the FTX Global Airports thing is here to stay, obviously, it has a lot to do with whether or not these sceneries are going to sell well. I think that the Papua New Guinea scenery should be selling very well. From what I've heard, it's doing quite well. And
Yeah.
that's leading Tim and Ken to continue along their path. And I don't, and call me optimistic again, but I don't think Palm Springs is gonna have any trouble doing well. So obviously, knock on wood. But I've just
Yeah.
been glancing over at some of the comments, and if you want to actually start browsing through there now, so that we can just start answering
Yes.
some questions before we begin to sign out. But so far, everything that I've seen has just been quite overwhelmingly positive. And for those of you who are watching, just remember we've tried to keep our progress of the scenery just to a small sort of isolated part of the scenery. But again, I think it encompasses something like 50 miles or something like that. And there's a lot of other towns and landmarks and things that are there. So quite naturally, we've only just seen a small part of it. So the airport itself is indeed, without a doubt, the centerpiece of everything. But I definitely encourage you all to, on your own free time, grab Bob, grab a helicopter, grab your favorite glider, and take your time and go out and see just how far the coverage area expands, because there's definitely a lot to see.
That's right. And thanks again. Again, as always, I'm never quite sure what to say when you make very nice compliments, but what you're saying about Misha is certainly spot on. What he's been able to achieve in the short time he's been developing is phenomenal, and what he's working on is just it's amazing. And likewise, what Tim and Ken do, to be honest, there's what you mentioned something about one-upmanship, and there's certainly none of that over at this part. And I think for me, like my main thing is I'm always looking for something different and interesting. So I prefer to be doing something different to my previous project, something that's not necessarily bigger, but just something that's different. So I do have a couple of different ideas for my next project following on from Palm Springs, and they are quite different types of airports, without giving too much away. But there are some different aspects because that's for me. That's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps me making stuff that isn't just sort of falling into doing the same old, and sort of spitting out the same stuff. Because for me, I wouldn't find that rewarding. And certainly, I'm probably a bigger fan than most of most scenery developers, than most guys. Like I get really excited when a cool project is coming up. So Tahoe that Misha did, and particularly Papua New Guinea. Like I was very excited about what Tim and Ken were working on. And obviously, I can't talk about any of these projects publicly while they're being in development, but I do get very excited. And even and certainly that's not just limited to the Orbx stable as well. So, for example, last night with your with the Fly Tampa Copenhagen, I was too busy to be able to tune in, but I've been following those guys really closely. I've been very excited with that, and obviously being Australian, I'm very excited about another certain product that they're working on. And so, yeah, I think that plays a part into it. I really enjoy seeing what other guys are working on, and try to take different ideas as much as I can along, and put them into my own work as well.
Well, definitely the passion and the amount of effort, it's very clear and it's very obvious in your work. So, I mean, for me it's all giggity giggity like a little girl, schoolgirl because it's like I'm very excited and I go crazy simulation and I think sometimes in my posts I tend to come off as a fanboy and it because I truly am. So, I mean, you are talking to a fan and again, I mean, I'm one of those kind of people where I look at things closely and I go into every single little minute detail. And lately, developers have been giving me less and less things to complain and whine about. So it's incredible. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to all the new things that are coming out. I think 2015 is going to be a crazy year. I really do. I think of all the projects that are sort of just planned and a lot of things that are expected to come out for 2015. We're going to have a lot to look forward to, but I'm glad that as we are now in the 11th hour of 2014, that we can squeeze Palm Springs right out the door before that. And it's fair enough to say that this is pretty much it for you for 2014. Is that correct?
In terms
Or could there be a surprise?
I don't think so. In terms of releases, I think this will probably be it. I do have. I'm actually going on holidays next week. My partner and I are going up to Thailand for a little bit, which will be very nice. We've never been there before.
Nice.
And I do have some other. So I've got a few music gig commitments as well, which will have me out of town in early December. So certainly, I would be very surprised if I would have anything out by Christmas.
Well, I certainly wish you a wonderful, fun trip to Thailand.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm just gonna scroll through the credits here and see. I'm not the credits in the comments to just see if there was any comments. A lot of very, very happy folks out there. Let's
Just
see.
trying to scan through and see some.
And Happy Metal. Oh, did we get that one? The one for Happy Metal?
Uh, Remind me, what was the question?
It says, can I ask something from the developer? Did you develop this on your own or different things like AVCAD Objects had their own developers? And congratulations on the scenery. It's beautiful.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was. I answered that when we were swapping aircraft
We did.
when we had the R66. So I've answered him. Just having a quick look along. Apologies for babbling on while I do. Um, I did see. I forgot who asked, and I'm just trying to find it now. But there was someone that was asking about the my back compatibility and working on prepared reinstallers, triple installers for some of my previous work. Yes, it's certainly on the cards. I know that I was talking about ready previously, and I do apologise for not having that ready, but that is the top of the list. There is still some issues which we are working with Lockheed Martin on for some of our airports at the moment. So there are a couple, and I won't give specific names, but there are a couple that I would very much like to be working on, but we are having some difficulties with. So hopefully they can be ironed out so that we can get them out to everyone. But certainly, as I was mentioning with my holidays and with some other traveling, it's going to be a bit topsy turvy for the next month or so. So I'm using it as a good chance to get on top of my some of my other work. So the triple installers and whatnot is certainly towards the top of that list as well.
And while we
Um,
continue to look, I see there's a comment by Regulate that says Big Bear Lake Airport and surroundings would be very cool to have. Obviously, I agree with you. I actually have a place up on Lake Big Bear. And last few years, we haven't gotten any snow, so we haven't had much of an excuse to go back. But I've said it before and I say it again. If there's any developers who's looking to take on the lake, I'll be more than happy to go up and take some pictures. That's definitely a favorite of mine. Never flew into Burbank though. That's definitely a high elevation approach. I think the base level is like 6,800 feet or something like that. But just wanted to echo that out. If any other developers are watching, we would definitely love to have Lake Big Bear. Hint, hint. Just continuing to scroll along here.
I didn't realize how close. Big Bear was always. It's always because it's one of those iconic airports as well, with firefighting and obviously the snow during the winter. And it is something that I've at least looked at before, and I knew that it was close, but I didn't realize it was as close to Palm Springs as it was. It's just literally over that mountain that you see in the background there. So that was quite interesting for me, at least, anyway.
Right, and then not only that, but a lot of people may not know this, but Lake Big Bear is actually directly underneath the LAX North Complex approach. So that approach, if any of you fly into LAX next time, especially if you're flying from the East Coast, as you fly into LAX, sit on the right side of the plane, and you'll actually overfly Lake Big Bear, and you'll also overfly Ontario Airport straight into LAX. So for those of you who may not have known that, it's one of the things that I look forward to every time I'm flying in. And sometimes when I'm out on the lake, just chilling out and looking up at the sky, you see A380s and A340s flying over because as they approach Lake Big Bear, I think, like I said, it's a little over 6,000 feet, and the airplanes above you, even though they're still small, they're still easy to make out the logos and stuff. So, um,
Yeah. I just saw a quick comment in there. I always enjoy um, being corrected, like legitimately, because I can't pick up everything, so it does help a lot. There was someone that was mentioning that Frontier don't fly Embraer 170s, and that's correct. They haven't flown them for a few years. The reference pictures that I've got, I think they're flying them at least in the late 2000s, so 2007, 2009. But it is a pretty stylish aircraft. Frontier fly there, so I did slip one in there. But I do know that there will be a few purists who will pick me up from that. So that's just a comment there. And let me just have a quick look through some more. Is there some more that you can pick up on? I'm just trying to make my way through now.
I think that's it. The last one I see is from Callegro, who asks, "Will we ever see a big GA airport like Van Nuys?" That's an interesting question.
It is a very interesting one. It's an interesting type of airport. Probably the closest I've come is the Spokane Phelps Field, which is the major general aviation airport in Spokane in Washington. But it's always hard because it sort of it takes out the airliner market, which is always a big influence. And the other thing as well is that quite often these really dense, these really big general aviation airports are usually sort of in a quite populated area, and in themselves there is a lot of detail. So it is always quite a hard task to get a detailed large general aviation airport done well without ruining performance. Whereas obviously with somewhere like Palm Springs, even though it's got the massive cities running along it, the airport itself is quite spread out. So it's a little bit easier to work out the best ways to get performance good with an airport like that. I'm just seeing a question there as well. I saw it asked earlier as well. It's just whether the jetways are animated. I did answer
Hmm.
this I had a similar question in the Orbx forums yesterday, and unfortunately, no, they're not. It was something that I wanted to include, and it is something that I still want to include in a future update at some point. Anyone who is listening who has developed these jetways before for the various products knows, pardon my language, is a pain in the ass. They are quite difficult to get to work properly, to connect properly with the aircraft. And basically, I got to the point where I was going to look at spending a couple of weeks getting these nutted out properly. I know that within Orbx, a couple of the guys, Russ and Marty, worked on them for Melbourne Airport, or particularly Marty figured out how to work them before we had a lot of the resources available to us now. He worked on that in 2008, and I think his hair went grey, jokingly, but yeah, he was pulling his hair out trying to get them on. So it is something that I would like to do, but it's not going to be in time for the initial release.
Okay. And We're gonna just take this one last question from Horizon Air because again, it's very early in the morning for Jared. What time is it there for you now? Are we pushing 3 o'clock a.m.?
3:45
Oh
time.
no. Okay. All right. Well, this is just going to be the final question, and Horizon Air just asked, how do airports get picked to be developed for Orbx? I'm pretty sure that's an easy, probably question to answer.
Yeah, that's right. It's to be honest, certainly in my case, I just pick an airport that that looks good. Make sure that it's okay with the rest of the team. Make sure that no one else is developing it, and go ahead. So I do have a lot of flexibility in that regards. I've picked all of my projects except for one, and it helps a lot because for a project like this, you really need to rely a lot on your own motivation to do things, and it's a long time between drinks, so to speak. So you really need to feel quite passionate about the airport that you're working on, and as well, it adds a lot of flavour. So everyone has their own tastes. I think probably my influences and my interests certainly convey themselves through the airports that I choose, and then guys like Tim and Ken have gone a very different route, and I find what they do amazing as well. And you see a lot of that, and that adds a real an element of color and variability to the airports that we choose, which I think is a great thing for us to have.
Wonderful.
Someone says go big Seattle, Tacoma, or Salt Lake City, and I say I don't think so.
Yeah.
Isn't there someone? Is there someone working on Salt Lake City
There is,
at the
as a
moment?
matter of fact, Pacific Island Simulations, Graham, who recently
Yeah, great.
relocated to Seattle. Yeah, he's that's on his 2015, 2016 roadmap. Not sure if it's going to come in 2015 or not. I know he put 3 airports up there, and he and I just had a couple of backdoor discussions about that project. And I think there's some construction going on there, something like that. And there's a couple of other source materials that he's waiting on in order to complete that. But he definitely has that on his roadmap. And
Yeah,
Imagine Simulations also doing Salt Lake City as well. So
Salt Lake City.
that's, I
It's
mean,
an
not
amazing
Salt Lake.
airport.
I'm sorry, Sacramento.
Right.
So that's going to be a good one for NCA as well, or Northern California. So that should be a good one
Yes.
for that also.
Yes, exactly. Salt Lake City is an amazing airport. I flew in there last year. It's a very dramatic, like it's got the mountain range behind it. It's a very beautiful approach. So I'm looking forward to that for whenever that is out. Someone's asking about Melbourne version 2. The current version of Melbourne is actually Melbourne version 2. There was an original version released in 2008, and this one dates from, I think, 2010, I think. Don't lock me in on that one. But I don't know if there's anything in the works. Not that I'm aware of, anyway.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. Jared, was there just anything else? Any last words? Any last thoughts? Finally, another project complete. You can take a break. You can go off to
Yeah,
Thailand.
not quite. Not quite. I'm almost there, but I'm not quite. So I can't take the foot off the accelerator just yet. But hopefully, it won't be too far away. I just want again. I just wanted to give you a big public thank you for all the work that you do, not only for myself and the Orbx team, but for the whole flight sim community. I know that you put in an enormous amount of work, an enormous amount of hours, and you seem to be up at weird hours, i.e., when I'm up, you
I
seem to
know.
go up, which is probably indicative of how much you do spend doing all of this, which at the end of the day is just something free for all of us. And I know that I speak for a lot of people when I say that I'm very appreciative of everything you do. And on a personal note as well, I'm very appreciative of the support that you always give for my products. It's really nice to have, and I do very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words. And hey, as long as you're still up, I'm going to be up. So, in terms of the great works you do, and it all comes from passion, and I just appreciate the work that all you guys do. So that's where my motivation comes from. If you guys don't give me anything to talk about, then I have nothing to talk about. So, that's the great thing about that. And I want to thank you as well for staying up so late. I hope the missus is not tossing and turning too much without you being there. But thanks to her for loaning you off to us for the stream. I know it's really late for you, and just appreciate again giving us all that great intuitive insight in terms of all the work that goes into it. Hard to believe that this whole thing was only 4 months, but it just shows just how incredible you are. And when someone who does the amount of work that you do and you're able to point out other developers and show the appreciation for the work and the talent that they do as well, it just kind of shows that not only how small our community is, but definitely how the appreciation how much appreciation that comes across. And when I talk to a lot of other developers and backdoors, your name comes up quite a bit, and Misha's name comes up just from a lot of the Orbx developers. And so it's always fun to hear how other developers admire the work of other developers. So it's
It
always a
is a
wonderful
small
thing.
world.
It is.
Yeah,
It
and thank
truly
you
is.
again. I genuinely do appreciate it. And for everyone, I can't give a release date. I'm very sorry about that, but suffice to say, is just keep an eye on the Orbx forums. We'll let you know as soon as we know, and hopefully tonight will give you an indication of how close we are to release.
Well, that sounds wonderful, and I'll be holding my breath for release. I'm sure as everyone else is. And on that note, once again, everyone, thank you for joining. We hope that you found this which again, thank you so much, Jarrad, and everyone at Orbx for allowing us to take a look at a scenery that's still in beta and to be able to show it off before it's actually released. I really, really do appreciate. Just having that honor. And again, for all of you, hopefully you found it useful. If you were not able to watch live today, or if you joined in late, it will be available via our YouTube page and on the Air Daily X main news page. And of course, the guys at Orbx is always welcome to embed it there as well. That should be available in about 2 or 3 hours, depending on how long it takes YouTube to upload everything. So thank you so much again, everyone. And we're going to go ahead and sign out. Enjoy the rest of your day and happy flight simming. And Jarrad, just hang on for me just a little bit. And for the rest of you, happy flying. Take care.
Thanks, guys. See ya.